the daf was made up of two parts, right? The first part of the daf, albeit the shorter part of the daf, was Minaha Milsa D'Amr Rabbanon Oiki Milsa Achazake. The second part of the daf, the longer part of the daf, was Minaha Milsa D'Amr Rabbanon Zil Basar Rubah. What emerged from the end of the second part of the daf, which is something that we already knew, is that not everybody even holds that you go Basar Rubah the lesser Kaman. Rameir, Elokod Meir Aneni, is Chayish L'miyuta. There's a Tosfos, Dibra Maschul Pesach v'Kotchem Ha'ikel Meimer, here in Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, where Tosfos discusses whether a meir that's Chayish L'miyuta is a Midairaisa that is Chayish L'miyuta, or is only a Din D'Rabbanan that is Chayish L'miyuta. Ayin Sham, maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. But for now, everyone knows that Rameir's Shita is that he's Chayish L'miyuta. The Prima Godim, in his Sefer Rosh Yosef, on Mesechtes Chulin, right here, on our sugya, Daf Yud Amud Beis, he makes the following observation. He says, we know, Chazal say, Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif. So anytime there's a face-off between the first part of today's daf and the second part of today's daf, you have this mano a mano between the idea of Oiki Milsa Achazake and the idea that we're Azal Basta Ruba. The rule is Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif. Roiv is always better than chazaka. Zok the Prima Godim. If that's the case, it should come out that Rameir, who doesn't go Basta Roiv, Rameir, who's Chayish L'miyut, at the very least Midrabanan, Kol Shekain, he shouldn't go Basa Chazaka. And freak the Prima Godim, Hayutachein, Loi Ro'inu v'loi Shamanu, that there should be a Shitas Rameir in Shas that doesn't go Basa Chazaka. Azoi is Ma'ir the Rosh Yosef. And he says, L'chura, in Cheshben of the Sugi, that's what should come out. Because Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif, and Rameir doesn't go Basar Roiv. So if he doesn't go Basar Roiv, Kavachayim, you shouldn't go Basar Chazaka either. Over the years, we've mentioned this Ha'ara from the Pnei Yeshua in his Kuntrus Achra in the first parak of Masechtas Ksubas. And the Pnei Yeshua, when he asks the Kasha, he doesn't just say that it Lo Shamanu v'Lo Ro'inu, that there should be a Shitas Rameir that doesn't go Basar Chazaka. He says it's in Mefurish Gemara in Eruvin Daf Lamed Hei Amud Beis, where Rameir goes Basar Chazaka to Meikara. So you see, Rameir does go Basar Chazaka, and he's not Chayish, quote unquote, L'miyuta, to say that we shouldn't go Basar Chazaka. Freik the Pnei Yeshua, this grace Akasha, that how can it be that Rameir is Chayish L'miyuta, he doesn't go Basar Ruba, yet he goes Basar Chazaka if Ruba v'chazaka is Ruba Adif. So he doesn't hold of the better one, which is right, that he holds of the lesser one, which is Chazaka. The emes is, over the years we found that this ha'ara is already mentioned in the Rishonim. And the Hagoyis Mordechai, in the end of Masechtes Yevamis, he is ma'ira this kasha, that why is it that you don't find anywhere that there's a Shitas Rameir, that Rameir holds you don't go Basar Chazaka. But the bottom line is, the ha'ara is, that if Rameir is Chayish L'miyuta, and Rameir doesn't go Basar Chazak, Roiv, then l'chayra in Cheshmin it should come out, that Rameir shouldn't go Basar Chazaka either. And I was thinking, just Lefum Riyata, when we learned the Gemara, we mentioned that from Benu Gershon, it's Klor. And from Rashi, it's a little bit mashma, that there's a Shitas HaMoiram, Rav Acher Bar Yaakov, who holds that you don't go Basar Chazaka. And we left it off with a Tmir Gedoyla. First of all, how could there be a Mandama that doesn't hold of Chazaka? And Befrat, how could there be an Amoira that doesn't hold that you go Basar Chazaka? How many Mishnayos and Brises, how many Sugis Ashas are predicated on the concept of Chazaka? If there's a Shitas Rameir who holds that you don't go Basar Chazaka, the Ha'ara from the Prima Godim and the Pnei Yeshua and the Hagoyis Mordechai, if there would be such a Shita, well then Rav Acher Bar Yaakov the Amoira would have a Tana the Messiah. And if that's the case, he could always say, I hold like Rameir. And by the way, this Shitas Rameir is a Shita, we just went to Gemara on Davav, there Gamliel Beis Dino, he held like Rameir, that's Chayish L'miyuta. So it's not a Das Yochid, there were under Tanam that also were Chayish L'miyuta. But the bottom line is, if you're going to tell me that from the fact that there's a Shita in the world that's Chayish it's muchach, that shita also doesn't go Basar Chazaka. So we found on Maramak, we have a shita sandam that doesn't hold that you go Basar Rav. And maybe that's a yishuv nochin to understand the way Ben Gershom understood Rav Acher Bar Yaakov. The fact that there would be an Amir in Shas that would hold you don't go Basar Chazaka. But either way, the Gedolei Achronim are not happy with this. And if that's the case, it's ton yishuv. How you talking? How's it possible that Rameir doesn't go Basar Rav is Chayish L'miyuta, yet he does go Basar Chazaka? So maybe you could say, Ubehektem. Tosfos on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. It's the second Tosfos on the Yomen. Tosfos asks a kasha. The Gemara said, Minah Milsa the Amar Rabbanan Oiki Milsa Chazake. And the Gemara brought him a car. And then the Gemara said, Minah Milsa Amar Rabbanan Zil Basa Ruba Freita Sakasha V'im Toimar Kivan the Amrinan Zil Basa Chazaka. Once we established that you go Basa Chazaka, Kosh came Basa Ruba. Certainly you should go Basa Ruba. The Ruba V'Chazaka, Ruba Adif. So Freita Sakasha. Once I have a makar for Chazaka de Mikara, why do I need a makar for Rav? Why don't we say that once I know Chazaka, Ruba v'Chazaka, Ruba Adif, so if Chazaka where it's Rav should work. Meaning Ruba v'Chazaka, Ruba Adif is a svara l'chayr. Meaning I know for sure Rav is better than Chazaka. Okay, so perfect. There's your makar to Rav. Once you know Chazaka works, you should know Rav works as well. So I think it's kedai to be tais inside. It says tais v'yesh leima. Dil Rav Acher ba Yaakov boy. Dil Kim le Chazaka mikra. That's the Tosfos that we mentioned in the daf. That the Gemara's question is, Aliba de Rav Acher bar Yaakov. According to Rav Acher bar Yaakov, that didn't have a pasuk for Minah Milsa, the Amar Rabbanan Oiki Milsa Chazake. What was his makar? This is where the Marsha speaks out. It's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, and we know ein lemeidin min halachas. So even though it's true, if I know Chazaka Kal V'chomer, I know Roiv, but there's a lot of limitations to Kal V'chomer. One of them is you can't learn Kal V'chomer from something that's halacha l'Moshe Misinai, like Rav Acher bar Yaakov, that it's halacha l'Moshe Misinai, ein lemeidim, and for that reason it's not going to be okay. But Tosfos says enochinami, according to the Chachamim, according to the Pash, this that the makar to Chazaka is from Nigei Batim, and I know it from a pasuk. Ich darf nicht makar for the concept of Roiv. And the reason is, I know it Kal V'chomer from Chazaka. Which, by the way, let's revisit. What is the makar to Roiv? Maka Ava V'imay, that's only one of 10 pshatim. Rashi came out that what is it really? It's not even the one or any of the 10 pshatim. Either it's Halacha L'Moshe Misinai, or it's learned out from Achrei Rabbim Lahatis. We have a Tosfos over here tucked away on the top of Yad Alpha Amar Aleph. It could be it's learned out from Chazaka. Because once I know Chazaka, Kal V'chomer, which means Nigei Batim is not only the makar to Chazaka, Nigei Batim is also the makar to Rai. Another ha'ara that I think is kedai to mention, and that is, we mentioned in the introduction to the daf, that the Rishonim much a little bit, why is it that we're even talking about Minah Milsa Amar Rabbanan Zil Basa Ruba? Wo kommt da rein Minah Milsa Amar Rabbanan Zil Basa Ruba? This is a sugya of Chazaka, it's not a sugya of Rai. And Rashi says, Ad Kedei Kach, Aidi de Airi b'Minah Milsa de Chazaka, Noka Namiha. Lefi Tosfos's first teretz, it could be it's very geshmak, because the whole question of Minah Milsa de Amar Rabbanan Zil Basa Ruba, it was only nischadish, it was only noilad from Rav Acher bar Yaakov. So once we mention Rav Acher bar Yaakov, who was very much a part of the sugya, so the Gemara, Rav Acher, I didn't know there's such a Rav Acher bar Yaakov. You tell me there's a Rav Acher bar Yaakov who doesn't hold that there's any makar in the whole world to Chazaka, Muzin Muzayin, that hasn't going to know it from Allah L'Moshe Misinai. So Kana ben Shayil, Minah Milsa Amar Rabbanan Zil Basa Ruba, he must have a new makar. So it could be the hemshach, Aliba the Tosfos is, we mention Rav Acher bar Yaakov, Tartan kum to Sarah. That's Tais first teretz. Tais second teretz, he brings from Rabbeinu Chaim, who said that the idea that Ruba Chazaka, Ruba Adif is actually not learned out. It's actually not learned out misvara. What then is the makar to Ruba Chazaka, Ruba Adif? It's learned out from the Para Aduma. Because the Para Aduma, although there's a roiv, that the animal's not a treif, as we saw in the Cheshbon, but Tosfos says that roiv is really going keneged the Chazaka, and afilu hacha you see that you go Basarayv, that's the makar to Ruba Chazaka, Ruba Adif. But the bottom line is, without going too much into that inami of Tosfos, what Tosfos is saying in the second teretz is that Ruba Chazaka, Ruba is not a svara. If it was a svara, and chinami, once I know Chazaka, I would know Raiv. Ruba Chazaka, Ruba Adif, I goofa learn out from a limud, and at this point in the Gemara doesn't know that limud. After you learn Chul and Daf Yud Aleph, it could be at that point the Gemara wouldn't ask the kasha, and a chinami. But the bottom line is, in real time, the Gemara doesn't know yet Para Aduma, thus the Gemara doesn't know Ruba Chazaka, Ruba Adif. These are Tosfos two terutzim. Rabbi Chanan, in his Kovitz Ha'aretz, this is in Siman Samech Zayin, Ois Daled, and it's also in Kovitz Shiurim, Mesechtes Bava Basra, it's Ois Ayin Ches, says a teretz nifla to Tosfos Kasha, but I think it requires a tiny bit of an introduction. That is, the Mishnah in Mesechtes Yevamis, Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amar Aleph, discusses the following case. There was a woman that went together with her husband to Medina Sayyam. She comes back from Medina Sayyam without her husband, and she says, Meis Baili, my husband died. So the halacha is Tinase v'titel ksubasa. She's allowed to get married, she even is allowed to get her ksuba. Why? I thought ein davish the ever pachis mishnayim. The teretz is be'edus isha hikilu that an eid echad is believed to say edus. Even a woman is believed to say edus, and a woman's even believed to say edus about herself. So if a woman would go with her husband to Medina Sayyam and come back without her husband, she'd be believed to say that she's allowed to get married. Zog the Mishnah Vayter abba v'tzarasa asura. This is Yavamis, right? So in the event that there was a tzara, her husband had another wife, so the tzara would be aser. And eid echad is always believed when it comes to edus isha. The reason is because the tzaras back in the day didn't get along very well. In fact, that's the primary reason Rabbeinu Gershom made his cherem forbidding and answering polygamy. But being that we're concerned that this woman doesn't like the tzara, and maybe she wants to get back at her, so maybe she's going and lying because she wants the tzara to get married, have another family, and they're going to all be mamzerim. As a result, she's believed for herself, but she's not believed for the tzara. Zok the Mishnah Vayta, hoisa bas Yisrael l'koyin. In the event that the tzara was a bas Yisrael, but the husband was a koyin, meaning she's someone that, based on how she was born, is not allowed to eat truma. She's a bas Yisrael, but because she's married to a koyin, she's allowed to eat truma. Toicha b'truma. Divrei Rav Tarfon, she's allowed to continue to eat truma. Meaning, ad kedei kach, zok the Mishnah, we don't trust this woman, Klapi the Tzara, that we assume that if she wants to continue eating truma, adaita the hachi that her husband's alive, Dan himself is going to be okay. So the Mishnah says that a woman that comes back from Dinah Sayyam and says, my husband died, the way we treat it from a halachic perspective is very mechudishtik. We mamish, we tzetel it. As it relates to herself, the halacha is tinaseh v'tital ksubasa. As it relates to the tzara asura ad kedei kach, she's even allowed to eat. Tosfos often says misafkilari. When the Mishnah said that the tzara is allowed to eat truma in the event that she was a bas Yisrael l'koyin, itavke b'truma d'Rabbanon, inami afilu b'truma d'Iraisa. Is it true davke for truma d'Rabbanon? Is it true even for truma d'Iraisa? No, the Rish said, I'm having a big problem with this Mishnah. How do you go ahead and mamish treat one woman as if she's a pnuya mid'Iraisa and the other one if she's an eshizish mid'Iraisa? I can't fathom it. Elamai, I think what's going on over here is that avada mid'Iraisa, she has an amanis. Narvaz, there's an idea that maybe she's trying to be makalkal the tzara. So it's for that reason, midrabanan, we're going to be chayish. L'may nafkamina, when the Mishnah says that she's allowed to eat truma, it's only truma d'Rabbanan that she'd be allowed to eat, because midrabanan we're treating her as if she's married. But if she wants to eat truma d'Iraisa, there's no way in the world you can't say that this woman's allowed to get married mid'Iraisa and this woman is 100% not allowed to get married mid'Iraisa. Mid'Iraisa, you have to make up your mind. You can't have a tarti desasment. You could say mid'Iraisa azai, midrabanan azai, and you could even carve out the d'Rabbanan and say we're only being machmer for one and not for the other. But as it relates to saying that mid'Iraisa, she has an amanis for herself, but she doesn't have an amanis for the tzara, misafkilur. But then he says, I'm not sure. Maybe yeah. Efshe yeah. So at first glance, I think I have a raya. And the raya is from the famous case of the Shnei Shvilin. Midi dahava a Shnei Shvilin. What's the case of Shnei Shvilin? There were two roads. One of the roads had tumah. There was so much tumah on that road that if a person walked down that road, it was inevitable, it was not possible that he became tumah. Either way, two people walk down the two roads. And then they were both Isaac and Tyrus anymore. The halacha is that in the event that the two people went to a Rav and asked the Shiloh, but they didn't ask it at the same second, they didn't ask it at the same time, the halacha is that each person is going to be considered to be tar. Why? Because each person was tar. You have a suffix now whether something happened. So you have a cheskes tyra, each person's going to be okay. Zok deri, don't you see from here, even though it's impossible that they're both tar, one of them is for sure but as long as he didn't ask the kasha in the same second, they didn't come to the rub of as achas. So this person's going to walk out tar, that person's going to walk out tar. Now we're handling dine deirais over here, and afilu hachi was splitting the baby in half, and we're saying that you're going to be tar and you're going to be tar. I to tar to the sasri. Zoktari, you see, I don't care. And if that's the case, Zoktari, as it relates to this Mishnah, it could be, this woman's allowed to get married midday raisa, and this woman is allowed to eat truma that she's still married. I feel midday raisa. But then Tosfos says, but I'm not sure. You know why? Because it's mavur in nida daf beis and chulin daf tes, that when it comes to safik tuma b'shus hayachid tzveikoi tame, in the event you would have two people that have the same safik tuma b'shus hayachid, where it's inevitable that one of these two people are, it's that both of these people are tameh. Over there you wouldn't say Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid Tzveikei Tamei says they're both Tamei. So Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid Tzveikei Tamei. But what if Reuven and Shimon both have a Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid Shaila? And we know for sure one of them is Tahar. You can't say they're both Tamei, because you know for sure that one are Tahar. So Tosfos, I'm very confused over here. I'm not sure what to do. I'm thinking that when it comes to Deiraisnes, you can't just go ahead and be Mechalik. And therefore, Mesafkeleri, that when we say Tzarasa, if she was Hoysef Astro L'Kayin Teichel B'Truma, maybe it's only Truma D'Rabbanan. But then again, I have Rayz L'Kan L'Kan. On the one hand, from Shnei Shvilim, I see that if they don't ask the question at the same time, they're both going to be assumed to be tar. But then again, from Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid, I see that even if they ask the question at different times, being that one of them is for sure tar, you're not going to say Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid Tzveikei Tamei. So which one is it? That was the re-Safik. That's why he wasn't sure what to do over here. The Chef Shmaitza in Shmaitza Zayin Beis says, let me explain to you what's going on in this Tosfos. And let me tell you what the Pesher Hadover is. Zok the Chef Shmaitza. That's klar. That if Bezdin wants to go ahead now and issue a psak, they want to say, I'm telling you this is the way it is. They can't issue a psak, midday raisa, where it's going to be a tartat asasri for two people. And that's why Mesafkeleri, the Re said, I can't hear that this woman stands in front of a court and Bezdin's going to say, you're a Penuya, you can go ahead and get married l'chatchila. You're married 100%, you can even eat Truma Deiraisa. Because how could Bezdin issue a psak, midday raisa, that's going to affect two people in two contradictory ways? I can't hear such a tzad, and it's for that reason, said the Tosfos, I'm mesupik what should be. Tosfos stellt zu Shnei Shvilim. What do you see in Shnei Shvilim? Bezok das Azach. Or bezok the Shmaitz, it's not true. Shnei Shvilim is not a Zushtal. Because what happens by Shnei Shvilim? What happens by Shnei Shvilim is that you have a suffix. I'm not sure, did the person become Tomei? Did the person not come Tomei? What do we say? Oikim milsa chazake. Zok the Shmaitz. Here's the punchline. Oikim milsa chazake is a psak? It's a Hiraz Bezdin? What's Aikim Milsa Chazake? Aikim Milsa Chazake is, I have no idea what happened. So if I don't know what happened, you leave it the way it is. There's a Chiddush HaTorah, needs a Makar, that you go bust to the status quo. And being that I don't know what happened, I have no idea how it spilled Zechais, how this whole story played itself out, so just leave it the way it is. But when Bezdin Paskins, you're Tahar because I have a suffix if you ever became Tahar, or you're Tahar because I have a suffix if you ever became Tameh, in those situations, Bezdin's not Paskining, Bezdin's just saying, I don't know, so leave it the way it is. The fact that Bezdin would have a tarta desasri in terms of how it's going to play itself out, that doesn't bother me, because it's not a Hiraz Bezdin. That's not a Hiraz Bezdin. In fact, Zok Tosfos, if you want a Zushtal to our Mishnah, I'm going to tell you what the Zushtal is. That it's Mavur, neither Daf Beis and Chul and Daf Test, and when it comes to Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid Tzveikei Tamei, you can't have a tarta desasri, where you have the same case like the Shnei Shvilim, but if it's a Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid, you're not going to say they're both Tamei. What's the vart? It's because Safik Tumor B'Shus HaYachid Tzveikei Tamei is Hilchasik Mirila, that we treat the person as if he's Tamei, Keneged is Cheskes Taira, and by the way, Tamei Afilu B'Taira is Vadai, right? Asur Kavadai. So you see, that's a psak. In fact, Kevin, so comes a psak, Mekene Shaban Astira. Zok the Shmaitza, that's what's going on in this Tosfos. Tosfos said, I'm mesupik, whether or not Bezin could paskin that you're Vadai Apnuya, and you're Vadai and Eshes Ish Midei Raisa. On the one hand, I have Shnei Shvilin. On the other hand, I have the two cases of Tum B'Shus HaYachid. But the way the Shmaitza learns it up in Tosfos, that what Tosfos was saying was that the richtige Zushtel is not Shnei Shvilin. The richtige Zushtel is the case of Safik Tum B'Shus HaYachid. Because Shnei Shvilin, you don't find that Bezin is paskining a case of Tarta Desasri. And the reason is because over there there's no psak. All it is Oikim Milsa Chazaki. Just leave it the way it is. As opposed to it is a psak of Bezdin. You're allowed to get married. Or Safik Tum B'Shus HaYachid, Tzveikei Tamei B'Teres Vadai, which that's a psak, that's a din that we're invoking and that we're using. Over there you wouldn't be able to do it when it's a Tarta Desasri. But I'm Mavur Me'ashev Shmaitza. And really this is an Inyan that's Mavur from Kama V'Kama G'doylei Achroinim. Is that Chazaka is fundamentally different. Fundamentally different than a regular Hiraz Bezdin. When Bezdin says, Oikim Milsa Chazake, and when they say, let's leave this at its Chazaka de Meikara, the geder of what Bezdin is doing is not that they're saying, we're paskening this the way it is. And even though it's a din Torah, and it could be Talacha L'Moshe Misinai, but the geder of the din Torah and the geder of the Talacha L'Moshe Misinai is not that we have a psak b'Torah's Vadai that Azoyah this. But rather, there's a Chiddush HaTorah that when we don't know what to do, what we do is we leave it at the Chazaka, right? in the real world, if you don't know what to do, you have to do something, right? In the theoretical world, okay, ich weiß nicht. But Bezdin has to do something. Bezdin's getting paid the big bucks to paskin. They got to do something, but they have no mahalach. There's no hachra. So that when we don't know what to do, just leave it at the status quo. But chazaka de meikara is not based on any vada'us, it's not a ras bezdin, it's not a bearer of any sorts. Because how in the world is a chazaka mevar? Right, just think about it for a second. Things change all day, every day, right? So just because something was a way yesterday, that means that's the way it is now? Mechatesi. Narvas, it's not being mevarer, it's just a hanhaga. I don't know what to do. You have a better idea? You have a better idea. Tell me. I'm willing to listen. But at the end of the day is if we don't have a better eitzna, so then what we go ahead and what we do is we are oikim milsa chazaki. That's the yisoid of chazaka. Either way, enters Rabbi Chana. Tais fragt Akash and Daf Yud Aleph in Masechtes Chulin that the Gemara says Minaha milsa dam rabbanan zil basa ruba. Fragt Tais vim toimar. Kivan damrin zil basa chazaka, koshkem basa ruba. The ruba v'chazaka ruba adif. Zok Rabbi Chanan. That's true. Roiv is better than chazaka. But you know why Roiv is better than chazaka? The reason Roiv is better than chazaka is because the whole yisoid of chazaka is that when I don't know what to do, oikim milsa chazaka. But to the extent I have a roiv, so I know what to do. And being that I know what to do, so b'chai gavna fakert. That's what I am going to go ahead, and that's what I am going to do. The reason Ruba v'chazaka is Ruba Adif is because chazaka only works but Makom there's no bearer. When there's a bearer, there you go basarai. At the end of the day, from Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif, what you see is that Roiv is a mevar, chazaka is not a mevar. There's no way to learn from chazaka that Roiv would be mevar. From chazaka you could learn. If there's something called a chazaka, there would be something called a Roiv. But at the end of the day, when I have Roiv, the Roiv that I have works better than the chazaka. Because Roiv is mevar and the chazaka is not mevar. And I can't learn Roiv being a mevar, kal v'chomer from chazaka, because chazaka itself is not a mevar. So Zok Rabbi Chanan, that's why, even though we know chazaka, we still need Roiv. You know why we need Roiv? We need Roiv. We need Roiv to know that Roiv has the ability to be mevar. We need Roiv to know that Roiv has the ability to be mevar. And by the way, the reason Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif is gufa, a toitzah from the fact that I know that Roiv has the ability to be mevar. Once I know Roiv is mevar, memela Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif, because the whole yisoid of Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif is that chazaka is when I don't know what to do. Avifel, I know there's a birra called Roiv, so now I do know what to do. But here's the bottom line. The bottom line is Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif is not the taich that the birra of Roiv is better than the birra of chazaka. If that's what it meant, if I know the birra chazaka, I would know the birra of Roiv. That was Taisus Kasha. Zok Rabbi Chanan is based on this yeshiva charade that the yisoid of Ruba v'chazaka, Ruba Adif is that I only work with chazaka b'makom I have no birr. And that's why when I have a roiv and I have a birr, there's no makom for chazaka. But at the end of the day, roiv and chazaka are fundamentally different. One is a mevarer and the other one is not a mevarer. It's for that reason, even though I would know chazaka, I would have no way of knowing roiv, because how could I learn that something is mevarer Kalvachomer from something that in itself is not mevarer? Al zen nemar, da you love him in adin, li is kenan. Either way, I think it's pashut that I'll pee this Rabbi Chanan and I'll pee this raid. It's miyushiv, the ha'ara gedoyla from the Pri Megadim and Rish Yosef and from the Pnei Yeshua and Kunchas Achra in the beginning of the Ksubis, and it's really a ha'ara from Dagoyis Martchai, and that is Rameir is Chayesh L'miyuta. That means Rameir doesn't go Basar Roiv. If Rameir doesn't go Basar Roiv, then Kal V'chomer he shouldn't go Basar Chazaka either, because Ruba V'chazaka Ruba Adif. V'lo Shamanu v'lo Re'inu, that there should be a Shittas Rameir that doesn't go Basar Chazaka. The Teretz is Pashat. The Teretz is two different things. There's no Shayches. Where Rameir says I don't go Basar Roiv, what Rameir is saying is I'm chayish l'miyuta. I don't think Roiv has the ability to be mevarer. To me, there's a Roiv, there's still a suffix. Midei sveika loy nafka, midei reisa, midei rabbanan, toises daf yudis. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, I still see a suffix. But does that mean that in Rameir's world there's no chazaka? Well, if there's no chazaka Rameir's world, what are you going to do when you're not sure what to do? What are you going to do? Rameir also has to have a fallback option. What, in Rameir's court, when they didn't know what to do, they said, I don't know, go kill yourselves, called Olam Gava? I don't think that's what they did. But and the mahalach is that you go basa chazaka. If Roiv and chazaka are both mevarers, and one is a better mevar, and you find Rameir doesn't hold of the better mevar, you can't hold of the lesser mevar. But Rov and Chazaka are two completely different tracks. It's no shayches. It's true Rameir doesn't hold of the bir of Rov, but Rameir still has to have a parsha of Chazaka. That's the yisoid of why Rameir, even though he's chayish l'miyuta, but at the same time Rameir also holds a Chazaka l'chayra pashit. I think it's Pashit mamish. Do bezeh pi this raid from Rabbi Chanan, which is based on Torah from the Gedolei Achronim. We just mentioned the Shmaitza, but there's other Marmakomis for this as well. That you see this idea that Rov and Chazaka are completely different. So again, what's the takeaway? Today's daf was really a tale of two dvarim ha'imdim berumay shalaylam. Minaha milsa the Amar Rabbanon oiki milsa Chazake, and minaha milsa the Amar Rabbanon zilbasar Rubah. The end of the day, even though Rov and Chazaka come together, how much do they come together? Rashi even says, "Aidi the Airi b'nah milsa the Chazaka namiha." Because how could you learn one without the other? The two are mamish one sugya. They're literally one and the same. But at the end of the day, as much as they're one and the same, they're fundamentally different. Lo yira izeh kira izeh v'lo yira izeh kira izeh. Because Rov is mevara the suffix, and Chazaka just says that when in doubt, this is the way you should go about it. But there's zero birr taking place when you have a Chazaka. Is they're both tools that were used by Bezdin midayraisa to go about and to tell the Yid what you're supposed to do b'matzav shel safek. But at the end of the day, they're not one and the same. Ad kedei kach that Rameir doesn't go basar Rov, Rubah the lesser kaman, he's chayish l'miyuta, yet Rameir does go basar Chazaka, despite the fact that in the world of Rov and Chazaka, Rov wins all day every day. Now the truth is, does Rov really win all day every day? No, there's one Chazaka that Rov is not better than, that's Cheskes Mammon, but the ain't kana makom laharach, right? Ain't holchem b'mammon acher Rov, amoitzu mechaveri all of Arayim, machlekes Rav and Shmuel. But either way, again, this was just a short, the shortest version possible with a little bit of raid of Chulin Daf Yud Aleph as it relates to the rest of the raid. Again, every single line here is a sugya arucha. By the way, just to appreciate it a little bit better, we had 10 Mekayros to Rov, right? 10 Mekayros to Rov. If you look at Tosfos and the Rishonim, they have kashas. How can we mention this? How can we mention that? So let me buy you all the sugyas that we spoke about just from going through the Gemara. If you went through the Gemara with Tosfos, you'd throw in another 25 sugyas, Bali Guzma, and all the raid, and all the different permutations of when you go Basar Rov, and his Rov Vada in the Tosfos Russian, the sugya of Takfu Kayin. This touches on Ksubas Daf Tes and Nida Daf Beis, all the sugyas Chamuris and Shas. But for now, we are going to stop here.